This is the Voices of Winchester podcast, the show that brings your stories, our stories, and all the voices of Winchester right to your ears. I'm your host, Pete Catoulis. Stick around for some great conversation. Welcome to the Voices of Win City podcast. I'm your host, Pete Catoulis, and with me in the studio today is Valerie Frost. Valerie, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say I am really grateful to be part of this conversation. I think Winchester is in a moment of possibility, so I'd love to come on and speak about that.
Why don't we get started by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and so on and so forth.
I am a Clark County mom, a former early childhood educator, a systems advocate, a recent TEDx speaker. Thank you for sharing that. And my work focuses on families who are navigating complicated systems. So that can be CPS, courts, schools, healthcare, public agencies, and how we make sure that their experiences are actually heard before decisions are made about them. So a lot of my work is about the gap between the stories that institutions tell and the story that families are living. I care deeply about Winchester because I'm raising children here, and I believe that local democracy is not just about voting, but about whether families have a real voice in the systems and community decisions that are shaping their lives.
And I had the pleasure of meeting your family at the Beer Cheese Festival. Thank you for approaching us and talking, and beautiful kids, absolutely. What about your background prior to coming to Winchester? Would you like to talk about that any? And by the way, why did you come to Winchester?
So I'm originally from New York and New Jersey area. And before I moved to Kentucky, or came back to Kentucky, actually, I came here toward the end of high school originally. I was living and teaching in Maryland. So I was a kindergarten teacher, kind of right in between DC and Baltimore. And when I became a parent, I started to think differently about the kind of life that I wanted for my children. So I was drawn to come back to Kentucky because I thought the cost of living might be more manageable and the pace might be better for raising a family. So again, I'm originally from the Northeast, the northern states, and just those more urban areas, just more fast paced. It can be fun and exciting as a young adult, even as maybe an older teen or just someone that's looking for fun. But as someone that was transitioning into parenthood, I just thought about moments and memories and really getting to watch my children grow up and soak those moments in. And I thought that coming back to Kentucky would be more conducive to that kind of lifestyle. So I moved to Winchester specifically in 2021. I would say at that point, I came from Madison County, so not that far away. But I was still rebuilding pieces of my life after some difficult seasons. I know that I've written about domestic violence, so I am a domestic violence survivor, which that affected my finances, and it made some choices for stability for my family feel out of reach. For example, home ownership. And so when I came here to Winchester, when I first moved, I went through a home ownership program, and it required me to move to a county that was surrounding Lexington. It didn't include Madison because it had to be a rural county, and Madison is too developed to count. And so I was looking at surrounding counties to Fayette County that were touching. I couldn't stay in Madison County anymore. And that's how I found, not that that nobody knew it existed, but that's how I landed on Clark County. And I found a home here. So when I talk about Winchester, I'm talking to someone who chose this place because I wanted my kids to have roots and I wanted stability for myself and for my family. I really wanted to overcome stereotypes that follow single mothers and families who have been through difficult things.
Love that. Maybe you should hook up with the Chamber of Commerce and do some videos for them about what a wonderful place Winchester is and how you chose to live here. But so I'm so glad to hear that you plan to raise your kids here. That's very encouraging. And so the follow-up question to that would be, what is your impression so far of our community? And be perfectly honest, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between.
So I do want to clarify, and I may have said this to you when you were skeptical. I live in the county.
Yeah, sure. Well,
They're not in the city.
yeah.
I laugh because again, I said I'm from New York and New Jersey, and I first came to Kentucky the middle of my junior year of high school. I was here. I graduated high school here, not in Clark County, but in Kentucky, and then I went to college in Kentucky for a year, and then I moved to several states. So at this point, I feel I'm a little bit of everywhere. I'm a little bit of all states and no states, and so again, that moment of I've had a pretty sporadic life in multiple places. I don't really have a place where I truly feels home. And I didn't want my children to grow up with that feeling. And so that's really important to me. It's important to how I parent. It's important to how I view the community because I want there to be a place that my children can distinctly say, I live in Winchester. This is my home. This is what I know. This is where I feel that I belong. And I use that word very intentionally, the feeling of belonging. So to answer your question directly and honestly, when I was moving to Clark County originally, I was really excited. I was really excited because it was a huge milestone for my family, and not to dwell too much into this, just stereotypes and perceptions of single parents could be, well, get ready for this one. Like, we're going to have to track them down. Their phone number is going to change every week. Their address is going to change. Those are the things that people might think.
Hmm.
And I just did not, I did not want to fit that. I didn't want my kids, I mean, all the numbers and statistics that could be on them. And so the thought of despite the hardship that I had gone through that affected my finances, despite all of that, I have now overcome. Like, I am going to own a home. My kids are going to have an address. They're going to have a place that they can say, I had a childhood home that I grew up in. So I was very exciting. And unfortunately, some of that past resurfaced again a couple of months. I mean, it was literally a few months before I got the keys to the house here. So I brought that domestic violence with me as I was moving in,
Goodness.
which I will say I see some people here who will make social media posts. Oh, they're talk about Winchester, and they are just, I mean, you can hear and see the light is just shining when they talk about Winchester. They are so proud. They are so happy, and they have so much faith. And there is nothing wrong with that. But when you are in a position where you need to actually test the things that you trust automatically, you can have a different experience. So I will give a totally harmless example because I have no experience with this agency or at all. Everyone, when you are a child and you are in school, so this is a shared experience. We all know stop, drop, and roll, right?
Oh,
We
yeah.
all do the fire drills at school. And okay, smoke is going to be there. Don't touch the hot door. All of this. Go down low on the floor. You go to community events like Lights Over Lycans and all of that. You see the fire trucks. You see the fire trucks going to the schools and shooting the water out. And you have this association that if I was ever in a burning building, that you will hear the sirens and you hear these like heroic stories, or you see them in the movies, right? Of the firefighter went back in the burning building to get the cat, the family cat, and all of this. And I don't think people question that, right? But what happens if your house sets on fire and nobody comes? And then you start to talk to other people and they say, yeah, I called. And I have never had an experience, so this is not based off of reality. I'm making an example. But if you start talking to other people and they say, yeah, my entire house burned to the ground, nobody came. They just don't come. That's when you start to question things. And so again, when I moved here, I was really, really excited. I wanted just to do advocacy because I was already in advocacy at that point. I had people even reaching out to me, wanting to plug me into different things. And then I got confronted with, I actually need this community a lot sooner than I thought I would. And the experience that I had when starting to engage with some of our systems and services here didn't match maybe the public story about what some of these agencies are doing and how they would respond. And that really set me back. It set me back a lot. I very not, I'm going to say intentionally, but and I don't want to sound dramatic. I really drastically disengaged. So again, like I said, when I first started to move here, and people who did know me knew I was an advocate, knew I was involved in statewide work. I was asked to do interviews, to do civic engagement interviews. I was asked to join leadership cohorts, and I still have the emails. And I said, no, I I don't know if I am going to participate in this community the way that I originally expected to, because I feel betrayed by some of the institutions here. And that has been a journey for me. It's been a journey for me to have to overcome some of that, to have to be forgiving, and to have to recognize my role in stepping back out. So I will say, I'll reference this specifically if you want to use this as a jumping point, but I saw your article this morning. It's complete coincidence. I don't even know how I got to it. I saw an article that you had written several years ago about community engagement here in Winchester. And I felt like that reflected some of my experience.
I appreciate your forthrightness, because we have to talk. We have to be perfectly honest when we're assessing our community, when we're assessing services, when we're assessing, our own lives. And we can't, if we just sugarcoat everything, we can't possibly move forward. So I guess my follow-up question to you would be, based on that experience, what are you doing, or what are you encouraging others to do um, to help rectify the shortcomings of the system? I know
I
that's a tough one.
No, it's not that that's tough. I'm really, really precise about language, and so the word shortcomings gave me a bit of pause.
Okay.
I I want to be fair to all sides, and in the work that I do, I know at face value some people might think, "Oh, she's just critical of the system." And it's one-sided, and it's not. I very much view myself as part of systems. I am a teacher. My background is a teacher. I still train quite often. I still teach across all levels, maybe not in the classroom today, but I feel like I'm constantly teaching when I'm bringing narrative change and mental model shift, and really expanding from maybe flattening different perspectives. And so I don't know if shortcomings is the word that I would land on, but I would say that there is potentially a gap between what systems intend to do and the impact that is had on some community members. And with your article about engagement, that really stood out to me, because that's really the lane that I am in most often, is training and teaching and narrative shift around community engagement and just around engaging impacted people. And so I would say, from that perspective, and this is something that I hope that listeners, can really consider. One of the biggest mistakes that I would say that organizations and agencies make is assuming that participation automatically means engagement. And so by that, I mean showing up, like counting numbers, like this, we had X number of people at this event, or we provided services to X number of people. I see that a lot, just like a head count. That to me is not engagement. Like an attendance check is not. Being present is not engagement. Um, I would say, for me, there's just a higher level. So engagement to me would require actual influence, trust, relationship, and shared ownership. And that, if we want to talk about shortcomings, I would say, again, I don't know if I love that word, but just the gap between intention and impact. There is a form of engagement that can be really one directional. It's that I have this program or service, I have this event, and it is to you. It is at you. It's at my place. You can come to my terrain. You can, get with the program, I guess, if you want to put it loosely. This is what I have to offer. And there can be an aspect of that has expectations for how someone shows up when they're engaging. So I can be really concrete there. I have heard people say things like, well, families just don't want to engage. Families, and I think they're honestly, and I hope you don't take this as an attack. There was some of that, I think, in your article a little bit that engagement is a two-way. And so I hear people say, well, we have events, we have programs, we have services, we have supports. There's a community resource guide. People just don't take it. And that there's an underlying expectation that the way that you receive it is not meeting my expectations, which again is one directional. The type of engagement that I am focused on is a relationship, and that is a mutual. So if you have a friend and you plan to go out with a friend and you ask them, where do you want to eat? What type of food do you like? Oh, when's the last time you've been there? You have a discussion, you plan together, they have some decision making. They can say no. Oh, hey, I actually don't like that place. Last time I ate there, I didn't really feel that good. I want to go somewhere else. And if they cancel the plans and something comes up, hopefully you don't just throw the whole friendship away, right? You're like, oh, that stinks. Let me know when you're available next time. And if something horrible comes up, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. How can I support you? Like, you dropped the whole thing. The dinner's out the window because you need me as a friend. A lot of times we don't see that with engagement. Is I had this event, you didn't show up, and now there's kind of a judgment now that you don't want this service and you're just not. So to answer your question again, just to go back directly, what I am doing is I am trying to view community engagement from both sides. So there are some existing efforts for organizations and agencies and professionals to have the resources and have the knowledge to do outreach to community and to make that invitation and to have the events and to have the resources. I don't see as much on the other side as far as our families, our individuals. I mean, you don't have to have children, like our people, citizens, county members, city members here. Are the residents of Winchester supported to engage back? And by support, I mean, do you have knowledge of the language that different organizations and agencies use? Do you know which is the right place to go? Because we could talk about one sector. Let's say I have an issue that could be related to law in any way. Do you know if you go to the police or the sheriff or the county attorney or the constable, how do you know which person to even go to? And then if you go to the wrong person, do they necessarily route you to the right person, or do they just say, no, you're not speaking the language that I need to hear for me to know that this is my role to fulfill? I mean, you could go all downtown and walk around to a bunch of different places trying to figure out. And then again, you could go to the right person, but if you're not using the language that's in their SOP, they might not hear you because it's not fitting into their checklist or their intake list or any of that. So again, one is knowledge. What exists? Who do I go to? What is the language? What is this in the first place? And then two is just knowing your options. So you can go to this person. If you don't go to this person, what else? What are my rights? What can I even just expect when I show up? Like, what does it look like if I walk into the city clerk's office? Do I need to bring something with me? Again, all of these different things. And then again, support. So maybe that's a lot to somebody. People have a lot on their plate. They're overburdened by so many. Gas prices have gone up and down and up again. It's been exceedingly hot the last few days. We just don't know what anybody's going through, right? So do you have someone that would go with you? Do you have someone who would explain these things to you off site so that you don't figure out maybe the hard way, or you're not faced with disappointment? And that I want to circle back to the place where I was when I first moved to Clark County, because I didn't know what my options were. I didn't know what to expect. And I had to find out through trial and error who were the right people to talk to, what is the right language. But when you're finding out through trial and error, you might say the wrong thing, or you might go to the wrong person, or you might show up the wrong way. I don't want to say wrong as if things are really binary, but you might show up in a way that's not supportive to your goal or what your needs are. And then with engagement, this is one of the principles of engagement I talk about. Uh, if there's damage, there should be repair. But repair, again, takes effort on both sides if you have a relationship, if there's a misunderstanding. So, what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to reach families and I'm trying to be that support for families to know how to engage in their community. So, I do that through one, just being available. So if people reach out to me and they want to understand different systems, they want access to data or they want to understand different data, I'm here for that. Again, I'm not a data expert by any means. I'm not a statute expert by any means, but I have a bit more access to some of those resources and a bit more experience, both professionally and personally. And I'm a third party. I don't work for an agency here. I don't work for an organization here. So I can just answer your question, and I can answer your question with the professional knowledge that I have. And I can also walk someone through. And when I went as a resident, this was my experience, or this is what happened. And even really simple aspects of it, like this is where you can park to get into that building, and this is what you need to bring with you, and these are the steps. Once you go in, you don't just walk straight up to so and so, you walk up to here and do this. And I feel like people really need that support instead of someone has an event or an entity has an event or a resource, and then it's, hey, they're not showing up, people don't want to engage, they don't care. There has to be some type of middle where it's people are being supported to show up. They know where to go. Whatever barriers they have are met and or not met, but the barriers are knocked down. And then also on the professional side, a little bit of translation as to what are people saying, what do they need, some support with maybe follow up and just all of that communication.
So you're doing this just sort of on your own. But how do we as a community work through this? How do we I don't do we engage an army of people doing what you're doing? Or I mean, it sounds a lot like social work. It sounds like you're basically acting in the role of a social worker.
I would not call it social work per
Okay.
se.
Okay.
I would say I'm attempting to build a bridge.
Okay.
And I do have an initiative that I have developed, and I'm working on expanding partnerships. So I am formalizing this into a real thing. Um, I would say as a community, I would like to see more spaces for honesty. And I really love the invitation that came from you as far as writing and being open to my writing. Like, I'm glad that you said that you were a little bit skeptical or unsure, because I was unsure about reaching out. So I can say as a community member, what I see often is that institutions are heavily represented in the narrative, and for whatever reason, I mean, that might just be part of their job is to put something out in the media. it's it can feel like one side of the story is being told, and so as a community member reaching out, the question is there space for my voice here? Is this even welcome? So I would say being really intentional about letting people know that they do belong here. I view belonging as an intentional act, that we don't just have places to go, we don't just have events, that we actually invite people with specific language and we tell people your feedback, good, bad, and ugly. What did you say earlier? Your feedback is welcome. When you provide that feedback, we will close the loop. You will hear from somebody, whether we appreciated the feedback or not. I mean, nobody says that anybody has to receive and that, you don't have to feel pride about what you do. And there are people that do really great work and they're really invested. But part of leadership is growth. And how do you grow if you don't receive constructive feedback? But I think that people really need to hear that because looking at the growth in Winchester, again, it looks really exciting. But if you're not from here or you don't fit in per se already, it can look like there's a moving train. And so it's like, wow, there's already a city here. There's already people that live here. They all have their roles. There are some people who are so happy here. And again, the light is just, they're twinkling when they talk about living here. But if you don't have that experience and you feel like you're on the margins, you don't really know where you fit in, you don't know where your support group is or your tribe or all of that, how do you know where to go? And so I would love to see both sides of the relationship. I would love to see some intentionality around, hey, you do belong here. Everyone belongs here. All families have a chance to interact. And this is what we're doing to let you know that you are included.
Be sure and keep us posted on your initiative because that sounds very interesting. And, I'm probably one of these clueless people with good intentions who likes to brag on the community and be a rah-rah cheerleader. I do recognize that's not everyone's experience. How do you how do you get folks like me engaged? How do you get I see this is such a complicated subject that I'm not even sure I know which questions to ask. It sounds really, really, really overwhelming.
No, I appreciate you saying that because that is you're narrating what someone else might think. And we're not going to build bridges if this is a us versus them, right? The people who are happy, the people who have their needs met. If we continue to allow a divide without someone saying, hey, let's just have a really awkward conversation about it. Let's just all be uncomfortable. Like, can we get in a room and say, I'm happy here and I don't really understand why you're not happy? Fair. And can we get someone else to say, I'm not happy here or I have some reservations and I don't understand why you don't see me? Fair. I mean, I say this often, engagement is determined by the end user. So if someone doesn't feel belonging, is something wrong with them or the conditions for their belonging haven't been met? We have to zoom out. There are a lot of families that live here. There's a lot of people that live here. There's a lot of children that live here, adults, older adults. Not everybody's going to be happy with everything, right? I don't think that's the goal, that everyone is happy with everything. But if we talk about everyone having a role in community or seeing themselves or seeing some effort for them to look like they count, that looks a little different. So, you ask about like, how do you hear or see something that is different from your experience or your
Yeah.
perception? I think where we start, and this is what I do. So the space that I'm typically in as an advocate is child welfare. I deal with CPS mainly. And I have partnered with all different stakeholders. I have partnered with the child welfare agency. I've partnered with the courts. I have partnered with social workers. And I have also on the end user side, foster parents, birth parents, former foster youth, and relative and fictive kin. And it sounds like, how on earth would you be able to get all those people in a room together, especially if you just talk about the impacted side? Why would you have a foster parent and a parent together, or a parent and maybe their grandparent that's raising the kids? When you get people together that all have a different perspective, the place to start, one, is what do we all have in common? Can we all agree that we care about Clark County? Can we just start there? Do you care about where you live? I hope so. I mean, if you don't, that's a whole other question. Do you
Yeah.
care? And when people are critical or they're frustrated, typically that's because they care a lot. Usually that anger and that criticism and all of that comes from a place of caring and not having a need met. If you don't care, you would be apathetic because there you wouldn't have a feeling, right? So feelings, they're a signal. Everything, behavior is communication. As a teacher, I say that. Um, so let's just start where we can agree. So when I'm with child welfare, what can we agree on? Everyone in the room cares about the child. Now, the approach to keeping a child safe and caring about a child may differ, but can we at least agree that we care about the child? Start there. The second place I also start with is, do you all see everyone's humanity here? Can you see everyone's humanity? And we do that by an icebreaker. Get everyone together. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? Everyone in the room, whether you are a leader, whether you're a manager, whether you are a frontline staff, whether you're a community member, everyone likes dessert, right? Everyone eats food. Everyone watches a TV show. They have a sports team. When we can all just start there, that everyone in this room is a human and we can all have something that we agree on. So we all like vanilla ice cream. I'm making this up. I'm actually lactose intolerant, but that's fine. We all like vanilla ice cream and we all care about Winchester. Okay, there. That is where we start. Now we can actually have a conversation. When you come in the room and you start with a disagreement, that's a really hard place to go backward from. So we just start at the very bottom. And then we start with okay, so we do a strengths gaps analysis, right? What's good? What's working? What is Winchester doing really well? I see some real strengths here. I can talk about my experiences even recently. The Parks and Rec had the bicycle rodeo. I think that is a great example. Kids can participate, families can show up. They give some bicycles away. Your bicycle that you already have can be repaired. That meets a real need. And they give out safety tips for bicycle helmets. They do helmet checks and all of that. That has been an event that has been a staple of my calendar year the entire time that we lived here. And I very much appreciated this year. I actually said to one of the staff, like, this gets like this is a good grade in my book as someone that evaluates engagement a lot, because when you create the conditions where people feel safe, where people feel seen, where they are invited and they are welcome, and you meet their need rather than dictating to them how to show up or what they're supposed to need, they will come. So this year there were over 100 children that came. And that was a lot. It was a lot. And with all the weather going on and they moved to the location, was a really big number, and that combated some of the narratives of, well, people don't want to engage. Well, they will. They're here. You see them, right? So we start there. We start with humanity. We start with what we can all agree on. Let's start with some strengths, and then we kind of work our way to what we like to see more of. And it does, as a relationship, it does take both sides. So people who may be closer to your end, people that are really happy or maybe haven't been confronted with needing a system in a certain way, or maybe whenever they do speak to certain people, they're just not met with the same experience. I hope that you can be open to hearing that someone could be really, really respectful to you and maybe not talk to me the same way, for all the various
Oh,
intersecting differences that we
absolutely.
can have. So at this point, well, I want to go back to that. So again, on two sides, I think for you to be there, just a willingness to be open, to go there and not feel like you have a decision already made, that you have an outcome that you're already looking for, that you're willing to be challenged and you're willing to learn and value multiple perspectives. And also to be giving. If you have certain knowledge of how systems work, or, business development and infrastructure, I mean, if there is an expertise that you have and you want to share that and lend that to the conversation, by all means, you do that. And then on the other side, on community member side, on people that may have not had the best of experience, on that end, it would be to be open to the other experience as well. That someone, it may be hard for someone to hear that the role they have been in didn't land the way that they thought it did. That's not easy for anyone. Unless you go to work and want to do a bad job, then maybe you're happy. Hey, I succeeded. And I mean, I haven't really met anyone that had that mentality. And I don't say that to try, I want to be very intentional here. I don't say that to try to police how people show up when they are being engaged. People, the best engagement would be that people can speak the language that they speak, that they are not, like I think you said, like sugarcoating or, overly pausing on word choice. It would be best if people could just show up and as themselves and talk. And that is why my role, like I said, a lot, being that bridge is trying to help translate, because someone may come in as a community member, and if they're just speaking their language and their experience, it may come out very charged. It may come out, not as organized. And I'm not trying to say this in a stereotypical way, just being realistic, depending on where they are with the situation. But then being able to funnel that into the language that a professional would use commonly in their workplace can help them to hear that. And then being able to go back to the community member and say, well, I'm going to translate this back into the way that you would speak and say this, can also help kind of bridge those differences. I wouldn't say throw people in a room together and just tell them to tell each other the truth without having really good facilitation and really good structure around that. So when we get to, what I think you even asked us, like, what would you like to see more of? I would like to see more community design supports. So we can say with some of the restaurants and places coming in, if we had paid forward meals so that it's not just, if you can afford this place, you can eat there. If you can't, you don't. And then some people are so excited about this new place and other people don't get to go. I would love to see jobs for teens downtown or more of that, so that we can have our young people invested. Maybe they're learning, they're getting some type of job experience so that they don't go to college and then come out and it's like, well, you can't get this job if you don't have X number of years of experience. Well, where was I supposed to get that? So we really include everybody. So again, like the paid forward meals, teen jobs, if there were childcare partnerships during community events. I've been invited to some events and even civic engagement. I have 3 kids. So can I bring them? If it's a professional event, is it uncomfortable? I will say in the national work that I do, I have tried to set a precedent of bringing my kids, and people have gotten used to it by now, but I haven't done that so much here locally. So I'm just not sure. If they've never seen someone bring their children, it may be a little uncomfortable. So can we arrange that if we want someone to come to a city commission meeting, we have that, I don't want to butcher the name. Is it like the Little Lambs playpen that's opening? Maybe something like that, where
Yeah.
they have like a parents' night out, and maybe it's sponsored the way that the splash pad is sponsored, right? Maybe we have some sponsored parent night out during a city commission meeting so that we could have more people show up, or a school board meeting, and we kind of reduce some of those barriers. Again, I would love, this is a personal, but I would love a community garden. I don't know if you've ever been to Indianapolis. They have like
Hmm.
a big one just out there in downtown. And Kentucky and Clark County were really fortunate to have really good land and farmers, and we have the extension office that could show people what would it look like if every neighborhood had more access to a local community garden where people could just walk up and take what they need, share on their block. I mean, I have a backyard and all this space, a clothing, a toy exchange. Think about like the Daniel Boone, like the festival or the beer cheese festival. What if we had tables all downtown one weekend and every family came, or even just people, and said, I'm just going to bring stuff that I cleaned out of my house and I'm going to have a table and take what you want. No judgment. If you need it, take it. And we just did that and just had that for the whole community. I just would love to see more spaces where residents can come and they can just ask questions and be together and have as many barriers reduced as possible.
I love that, and see now you're helping me to visualize what all this could look like. You've given concrete examples, and I love the last idea.
I just what I want people to think about is that a town can look like it's thriving, and your perception, and this again, this is not an attack. This everyone is entitled
I
to their
get it.
experience.
I get it.
Everyone has
Speak
their
freely.
impact. A town can look like it's thriving and still have families who feel invisible.
Well, and I of all people know that well because while my wife and I are very fortunate, we're both retired. We're drawing pension. I'm drawing Social Security. We have insurance. We have a home. I have adult children whose life experience is a lot different. And in fact, if it weren't for the fact that we are able to help them both financially and, if they need a place to live for a while or, whatever, to help with, parenting, babysitting. If it weren't for that, I don't know where they would be. So I see both sides of it. I really do. And it's easy for me to connect with my own family. It's easy for me to anticipate their needs and try to, be of assistance. It's a little different when you're talking about, people out there in the community. So I think some of these things that you've talked about today, some of these strategies and this initiative that you talked about, um, I, I think we're very fortunate to have people like you, and I know you're not the only one. I know several people in this community whose hearts are very much in the same place as yours when it comes to helping families and helping people that are outside of the mainstream um, that maybe aren't seen, as you said, or feel welcome, to be engaged in community. So it's a tough problem, but it's something that we can aspire to, right? Something that we can work towards trying to improve this. And so I
Kindness.
before we sign off and we're getting close on time, I try not to go over 30-45 minutes because people shut you off after a while. But I always like to ask, is there a question that I should have asked that I didn't? Is there something else you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what people like you can do or what anyone can do really. And I wanted to normalize I don't think it's easy. I don't think community engagement is easy.
Mm-mm.
So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, Valerie thinks we should all be doing this and she thinks she's this expert and all of that. It takes intentionality and it does take I mean, again, engagement is a relationship. I say that. The people that you are the closest to may be the ones that frustrate you the most or the ones that have let you down the most because you're more vulnerable, you're more open to them. But again, when you care and you're intentional and you're thoughtful, you work through that. You repair when there's damage. So, what I would say as a starting point would be to notice who's missing. And it can be easy when you're in your peer groups and your social circles to think that everyone has a shared experience because that's what you're seeing. But if you pause and say, who's not here? Who is not being served? There could be a wonderful I mean, I mentioned the bicycle rodeo. What would it look like if churches with church vans had transported additional families? And that is not a criticism to that. I love that event and they know that I love that event and I'm happy to promote it. But I always think that, Jesus left the 99 for the one. And that is, I can't let go of that. Who is the one person that could not make it and why? If they had something else to do, they had something else to do, right? But was it because they didn't have transportation? If neighborhoods coordinated and said, well, I have an extra seat in my car, why don't you and your child, I have 2 seats, why don't you all come? We can carpool. I mean, there's just different ways. So again, start by notice who's missing. If you run a program, ask who is not showing up and why instead of counting your numbers. We served X number of residents here. We had the impact reports always count the heads. Can you count who needed it and didn't come? Is it because they didn't feel welcome? Is it because they didn't feel seen? Is it because they were not sure? Is it because they just didn't know what to expect? If you have resources, ask whether people need them, if they know how to access them. And if you have power, ask whether you are sharing it or simply inviting people to observe it. And I would say for residents of Winchester, if they're listening, I want them to know that they're not alone. If you have wondered if you belong, if you have wondered why someone else is so happy and has the shining, and I'm not saying that there is such a binary experience either of I'm either happy or I'm not. There's a lot of nuance there, and there could be I'm happy with this, but this could use improvement. I mean, there's all over, but I cannot imagine that anyone has an experience, a solitary experience in anything here at all. And I believe that people that live here deserve clear information, they deserve support, and they deserve to have a voice in the systems that are shaping their lives.
Well said. Valerie, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for listening to the Voices of Winchester podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for even more content, head over to wincityvoices.org, our e-magazine, where we feature some of the best local writers and artists, as well as news from around town. And to stay up to date on everything Win City Media, follow us on Facebook at Win City Voices. This podcast is brought to you by Win City Media, a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% supported by listeners and readers like you. Please visit wincitymedia.org to learn how to donate and help keep local independent journalism free for everyone. Until next time, I'm your host, Pete Catoulis, signing off.